At a garbage dump outside Buenos Aires, men wade through piles of rubbish, searching for usable clothing and even food in mountains of waste. Cardboard, plastic, and metal get sorted and hauled away, with hopes to sell it later. As Argentina grapples with staggering inflation, these men are struggling to survive. Inflation could hit 100% this year, the sharpest rise in prices since a period of hyperinflation around 1990. An extreme case in a world battling to tame soaring prices. Sergio Omar, a father of 5, spends 12 hours a day trawling through the garbage.
Twice as many people are coming here because there is so much crisis. The situation is growing and growing, and they do not care about the poor workers, we who are the poor. We live day to day.
A century ago, Argentina was one of the world's most affluent countries. But in recent years, it has slid from one economic crisis to another and has struggled to keep inflation in check. In 2001, during one of Argentina's worst economic crises, Sandra Contreras set up the Luján Barter Club. It's now taking off again as Argentines, unable to keep up with prices, look to exchange things like old clothes for a bag of flour or pasta.
La gente viene muy desesperada.
People come very desperate. Their salaries are not enough. Prices are rising day by day.
Sí, porque no hay plata. Entonces, bueno.
People have no money left, but we need to take something home, so there's no choice but to barter.
Poverty levels in Argentina were over 36% in the first half of 2022. And extreme poverty rose to 8.8%, some 2.6 million people. Pablo Lopez, who works in a small recycling center, said that the scars of rising prices were clear to see.
This inflation is a madness. You can see it here with the people who come to work, that inflation hits us all.
Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes.
A Florida jury on Thursday decided to spare the life of Nikolas Cruz, the gunman who killed 17 people in 2018 at a high school in the city of Parkland, calling for life in prison without possibility of parole instead of the death penalty.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No.
Mitigating circumstances outweighed aggravating factors in each of the 17 murders, according to the jury, and so the prosecution's request for the death penalty was not supported. Some family members wiped their eyes, others shook their heads and covered their faces. While they stayed quiet inside the courtroom, many expressed outrage afterwards.
I was prepared for the rest of my life to seek justice, and I could not be more disappointed in what happened today.
We are beyond disappointed with
Ilan and Lori Alhadef, whose daughter Alyssa was killed in the shooting, told reporters outside of the courtroom they were disgusted with the outcome.
I'm disgusted with those jurors. I'm disgusted with the system. What do we have the death penalty for? What is the purpose of it? I pray that that animal suffers every day of his life in jail.
24-year-old Cruz had pleaded guilty last year to premeditated murder at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. He used a semi-automatic rifle to kill 14 students and 3 staff members in one of the deadliest school shootings in American history. The sentencing trial, held after Cruz's guilty plea, lasted 3 months. Family members whose loved ones were murdered, as well as survivors, provided emotional testimony throughout the trial.
She wasn't given time here with us to continue to write her story.
The prosecution arguing the crime was premeditated, heinous, and cruel. But the defense called witnesses who testified about Cruz's mental health disorders resulting from his biological mother's substance abuse during pregnancy. Despite their deep disappointment, many parents turned advocates, like Lori Alhadef, said they are as motivated as ever to get federal gun control legislation passed.
So that we have to do so much more to prevent the next school shooting and work so much harder because this cannot happen.
He is the one person at the center of the story of what happened on January 6th. So we want to hear from him.
The special U.S. House Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol voted on Thursday to subpoena former President Donald Trump in an effort to compel him to testify under oath about his actions on the day his supporters stormed the seat of Congress in an effort to halt the certification of the 2020 presidential election.
Question is on agreeing to the resolution. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans unanimously voted for the subpoena at the end of a more than 2-hour public hearing where the members made the case, supported by recorded testimony from some of the former president's closest advisors at the time, that Trump intended to deny his possible defeat even before Election Day, that he promoted false election claims that his advisors told him were unsupported by evidence, and failed to call off supporters he'd been warned were armed and prepared for violence once they'd breached the Capitol. Here's Democratic Representative Adam Schiff.
The president knew the crowd was angry because he had stoked that anger. He knew that they believed that the election had been rigged and stolen because he had told them falsely that it had been rigged and stolen. And by the time he incited that angry mob to march on the Capitol, he knew they were armed and dangerous.
And the committee shared for the first time previously unseen footage of congressional leaders, including Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi,
they're breaking windows and going in.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, and Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell, huddling and making frantic phone calls to cabinet members, governors, and even Vice President Mike Pence in an effort to get nearby National Guard units to clear the Capitol of rioters.
We have some senators who are still in their hideaways. They need massive personnel now. Can you get the Maryland National Guard to come too?
Democratic committee member Jamie Raskin said the footage showed elected leaders doing all the things Trump did not as the riot was underway.
All of them did what President Trump was not doing, what he simply refused to do.
Donald Trump is unlikely to comply with the subpoena and has called the January 6th committee hearing a partisan witch hunt. The upcoming November midterm elections could likely hand control of the House and its committees to Republicans, many of whom echo Trump's false claims of election fraud. In that case, the committee would likely be dissolved and the subpoena for Trump quashed. Republican Liz Cheney, who lost a primary challenge to a Republican supported by Trump, said that nevertheless they would seek the truth on behalf of the American people.
Without accountability, it all becomes normal and it will recur. So as we watch the evidence today, please consider where our nation is in its history. Consider whether we can survive for another 246 years.
When the power is out, Ukrainian Lyubov Pali plays with her baby in darkness, illuminated by candles and the light on her phone. Families like hers are bracing for a harsh winter after Russian missiles and drones rained on cities across Ukraine this week. The strikes hit power plants and electricity stations, damaging around 30% of the country's energy infrastructure.
When
this happens, we just play together in bed, laid together. I light the candles and the flashlight on my phone. I couldn't take a shower or bathe my baby because I can't do this in the darkness with a flashlight. Just a small wash. It hasn't influenced his feeding because one light is enough to do this. I breastfeed. It's all good.
The 23-year-old's family fled the advancing Russian occupation in the southern Kherson region when she was pregnant and moved to Kyiv in April. She tearily explained that while no part of the country was safe, it had been less scary in the capital than in Moscow-controlled territory.
But it's not that scary in Kyiv because all my close ones are near. My mom is here. It was very frightening then, when my mom was there and I was there, in Kherson. I didn't know, in the first days especially.
President Volodymyr Zelensky's government said power had been restored to millions of people, but warned that Ukrainians should prepare for more blackouts. Russian missiles and drones struck 28 energy installations over 3 days this week, according to the Ukrainian government. Moscow denies targeting civilians. Authorities say power has been restored to more than 4,000 towns and villages since the strikes, but the government is urging citizens to stock up on warm clothes, candles, flashlights, and batteries. They've also asked people to limit their use of energy-guzzling appliances like ovens, washing machines, or kettles during peak consumption times.
Some Kyiv residents like Sonik Markosian were already prepared when the lights went out. She recently started a business making candles in the small kitchen of the apartment she shares with her boyfriend.
We started candle business, a little bit, just started. So I had all the materials at home that I needed for the candles. And I had some ready candles in the cafe and at home also. We are planning to make more candles and to have more materials because of this blackout.
So far, the government's pleas have had some impact. Ukraine's prime minister said consumption dropped by 10% between Tuesday and Wednesday, without giving specific figures.
U.S. stocks ended sharply higher on Thursday after a stunning whipsaw reversal following a disappointing consumer prices report, as technical support helped drive the rebound. The Dow finished up 2.8%, the S&P 500 rose 2.6%, while the Nasdaq ended 2.2% higher. Stocks had plummeted earlier in the day after the headline consumer price index rose at an annual pace of 8.2% in September, a higher rate than expected, all but affirming the Federal Reserve will stay the course with its aggressive plan to hike interest rates. David Spica, Chief Investment Officer at Guidestone Capital Management, explains what he thought prompted the market's wild swing higher.
Well, when the CPI number first came out, it was much higher than expected. And as you would expect, rates rose and the market declined. However, I think once people stepped back, they said, you know what, we knew the Fed was going to have to continue to be very aggressive. We knew inflation was still going to be a problem, so we probably overreacted. And so you've seen rates fall, and that's propelled a move higher in the stock market. That doesn't mean this thing's over with. We still have a long way to go, and we still feel like the next shoe to drop will be when the market starts pricing in the inevitable earnings decline that comes with a recession.
Energy and financials led the gains among the S&P sectors. Big Wall Street banks kick off the third quarter reporting season on Friday, with investors waiting to see how a high interest rate environment affects their profits. Megacap growth stocks Apple and Microsoft each ended more than 3% higher, while shares of Amazon ended lower, and shares of Walgreens Boots Alliance rose more than 5% after the pharmacy chain reported a better-than-expected quarterly profit.